Welcome back to another episode of Coming Out. Today we have candidate for District 27, Congressional District 27 of Florida, Elliot Rodriguez. Elliot Rodriguez, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Let's begin. I mean, we know you, right? We've known you. We've had you on our screens for many years. Tell us why you're running.
Well, let me start out by, first of all, thanking you for inviting me and
My pleasure.
Asking you a question because I'm a journalist. You know me, but do you really know me? You know me as the guy on TV delivering the news.
Correct.
But when I retired from my job at CBS News Miami in December, I started watching news not as a journalist, but as a taxpayer, a citizen, a father, and a grandfather. And I was horrified by what I saw. And that is the reason that I'm now running for office. I had the shortest retirement in the history of retirement. So I'm glad that we have this opportunity so you can get to know me, not just my job as a journalist that I did for so long, but me as a person. So thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure. And you're right. I don't know you, but now I'm starting to find out you're a grandfather. So tell us about your family. Tell us about,
Sure. I have 4 daughters. And my wife, Brenda, has 2 daughters.
Okay.
And they call me Dad, and I'm happy to have that title. So we have 6 daughters together. They're all grown up. Out of the 6, 4 of them are married. 4 of them have children, but they're spread out all over the place because they cannot afford to live in this community. I have 2 daughters who live in Orlando. Erica is a college professor at the University of Central Florida. She teaches broadcast media, what I do for a living. She's training the next generation of journalists. Bianca is a kindergarten teacher. They moved to Central Florida because they couldn't afford to live in their hometown. But they're both married, great lives, great kids. Each has 2 boys, and I go visit a lot on the Bright Line. We have to make sure that the Bright Line stays open because for people like me, that's my connection to Central Florida. I have 2 daughters, Julia, who lives in Miami, and then Gabby, who lives in Los Angeles. And then with my 2 stepdaughters that my wife has, we have Chantal, who is moving to North Carolina in a couple of weeks because she cannot afford to live here.
Incredible.
And she and her husband both make 6-figure salaries. You know, they have a 1-year-old boy, our grandson Lucas, but now they're moving to Raleigh, North Carolina, which I'm sure is a fine city. I've never been to that part of North Carolina, but I'm sure it's great. We would like our grandson to live here, closer to us. And then I'm missing 1 daughter, the last daughter, and this is the kicker. My stepdaughter, Ashley, lives in Italy. Nice. She and her husband were looking at a house in Doral, and believe me, it was a fixer-upper. And they didn't make an offer on it. Instead, they decided to buy a house in Italy. They bought 6 acres with a 2-story house and a 2-story guest house in beautiful, picturesque Umbria, not far from Tuscany, and they paid less for that property than a fixer-upper in Doral. So if that doesn't tell you that we have a serious problem with affordability in this community, nothing will.
Well, everybody just talks about it. And what is your plan on that?
Well, it's interesting. I was at an event yesterday with realtors, and they kept talking about the luxury market. They kept talking about condos of $5-10 million and how all these people are moving to South Florida, specifically Miami, because of the tax advantage. We have no income tax here, and people have discovered Miami. Rich people have discovered Miami. So during that event, I got up and I asked a question. I said, I am thrilled to see that the luxury market in Miami is doing so well, that we are attracting these people who have a lot of money and investing in our community, and that's wonderful. But what about the others? What about the middle class? What about the working class? What about people like my daughters who cannot afford to live here? Who is watching out for them? If they can't afford to live here, they cannot do the important jobs that make this community run. It's wonderful that this high price market is doing so well, but we need to focus on that. What I want to do as a member of Congress is to be focused on the issue of the cost of living in South Florida. What can we do to incentivize more developers to build affordable housing? What can we do to bring block grants or tax credits to developers here who are willing to work with local communities to build more affordable and workforce housing. I will go to Washington to fight against these tariffs that are making the cost of construction higher. So it's more expensive to build housing. And also, the immigration policy that we have is making the cost of labor more expensive because a lot of immigrants, they may be undocumented, they may not be, maybe somebody in their family is, are afraid to leave the house, are afraid to show up for work. So all of that is adding to the unaffordability crisis that we have in this community. And that's why I'm running. I want to do something about it. I want to be an advocate in Washington.
Your district is that you're running for, or not your district, but the district that you're running in is 27.
Yes.
It's they call it the gem of Florida. You have environment, you have multiple issues. I live in your district.
Yeah.
I will be being active, continue being active. Tell us about it. What do you see the disparities in that district?
You know, it's a really important district, and it's okay for you to call it my district. You know why? Because when we moved, when my family moved to Miami, when I was 12 years old from New York, my parents were Cuban immigrants who went from Cuba to New York City, where I was born. But when we moved to Miami at the tender age of 12, we moved into this district. My dad wanted to buy a house in Coral Gables. Instead, he was a smart businessman. Instead of buying a house in Coral Gables, he bought 2 homes in a neighborhood called Coral Gate, which is on the other side of 37th Avenue. So I grew up in that area, Coral Gate, later on Coral Gables, Kendall, Key Biscayne, Coconut Grove, Brickell. These are all areas. These are all areas where I have lived. I have been a homeowner in those areas, and those areas fall within the district. So I can easily say this is my district. And you know what? You're right. It is a very, very interesting district because we have some of the richest zip codes in South Florida. You're talking about Coral Gables, Pinecrest, South Miami, Key Biscayne, Brickell, downtown Miami. But then you're
Does it touch the island?
Key Biscayne.
Okay.
Key Biscayne, we have a little bit of Venetian Islands close to downtown Miami. So we have a lot of affluent areas, especially along the coast. But then we also have Little Havana. We have Westchester. We have parts of Flagami. We have a little sliver of Overtown. And down south, we have Goulds and East Perrine. We also have Palmetto Bay, Cutler Bay. So it's a very diverse, very interesting district. And it's a district that I know well, and I feel that the people who live in the district know me well because for years they allowed me into their homes to bring the news to them. And I worked hard to earn that trust. Now I'm trying to earn their votes.
With that said, what separates you from other candidates that are vying for this position, and even from the incumbent?
Well, 2 things that separate me. One is that people know me. People trust me, and people know that I am an honest broker of information. That's what I've done. They know that I am not doing this for fame or for fortune. I'm doing this because I'm outraged about what's happening in this country. Also, I believe that I am the candidate who can win this race. As Democrats, and I've been a lifelong Democrat, as Democrats,
So have I.
there you go. As Democrats, we have to be tired of losing. We have to be more strategic.
We are.
We have to find candidates who can win these races. I believe that I am that candidate. Why? Because of the time that I've lived in this community, because of the fact that people know me, I have the name recognition, and also because we've done polling, and the polling verifies what we believe, is that people know me, they trust me, and they will vote for me because they know me, but also because they are so displeased with Maria Elvira Salazar, who is the incumbent in that district, who is not focused on the needs of the people in that district. Today, actually it happened yesterday, but it's in the news today, that Donald Trump said that no, he's never spoken to any Republican about Cuba. Think about that. He said, no Republican has come to talk to him about Cuba. So that means that Maria Elvira Salazar, who has made a career talking about Cuba, has not talked to the President of the United States about what's going on in Cuba. If she's not talking to him about the one issue that she has centered her career, political career, and television career on, What is she talking to him about affordability? Is she talking to him about the cost of living? Is she talking to him about infrastructure problems that we have here in South Florida? I don't
No,
think
but
so.
she voted against the infrastructure bill,
Yes.
and she took credit for it.
She has done this on a number of occasions.
So for that reason, I've coined her to be Maria Mentira. I am, with all due respect, Maria Mentira is what I've coined her, because it comes to the point that you just can't hide it anymore. No. I mean, how can we sugarcoat it when she's voted for against these bills, and then she comes and highlights like oh, look what I'm bringing to the community. It's all lies.
And she's done this more than once. She's done this on 3 different occasions. And one time she did it during an interview with my former colleague, Jim DeFede, who is one of the best reporters that you're going to find anywhere, where she was taking credit for infrastructure projects in the district.
There
and
you
Jim
go.
DeFede had to stop her right there and fact check her and said, I'm sorry, Congresswoman, but you actually voted against that infrastructure bill. And she was, well, there was a lot of waste in that bill. But doesn't matter. You voted against it. And then she showed up a couple of times with checks.
Of course.
A picture of a check. And
Yes.
people had to stop her and say, you voted against that. So saying Maria Mentira, Maria que no dice la verdad,
Right.
is absolutely factual and on point.
One of the things that we were talking about earlier was the fact that we're here, and I've given the voice to the Democratic Party because we are tired of losing. So there isn't enough Spanish media here that supports the other side. So on this side, I thought that I would bring a voice to the Democratic side and have the congressional district. So I thank you for coming, and I thank you for giving a voice, and I thank you for putting yourself out there and for this community. So I just wanted to make that point across. This is we've done a full District 26, 27, and 28 on congressional candidates, Democratic candidates. So we are tired of losing. So on this time around, I think we can change that, and we hope to change it.
We're going to do it.
And we're going to do it. Legislative wise, what are your priorities? What are your let's say top 3 or top 2?
Well, without a doubt,
other than affordability.
Without a doubt, the top priority is affordability,
Okay.
the cost of living. So that's what I'm going to focus on. Another issue that got me here is immigration. I told you that my parents came to this country from Cuba as immigrants in the 1950s, before the Cuban Revolution. So they were not refugees, they were not exiles, they were immigrants, just like people who come from all over the world to start new lives here. They met in New York City, where I was born. So if I ever write a book, the title will be From Anchor Baby to Anchor Man.
Okay.
So when I was born, my dad had already lived in New York for about 10 years. He met my mother. They were both Cuban. He met my mother 1 year after she had arrived, and I was born a year later. If ICE had stopped my family back then when I was born, they would have found my dad, who had his immigration documentation in order. They would have found me, who has birthright citizenship. Thank you very much, United States Constitution. And then they would have found my mother, who had just arrived in the United States the year before on a work permit. She was working in a factory in the garment district. Remember, this is before Castro, and Cubans were allowed to do that. So if they had stopped my family, they could have conceivably grabbed my mother, separated me from my mother. Why? Because they're doing it now. And that's wrong. So that is one of the issues that drove me here. And especially when you have a congresswoman like Maria Elvira Salazar, who claims to be a champion of immigrants and goes to Alligator Alcatraz and says, oh, the conditions there are not so bad. How can you say that? How can you say that about a detention center in the middle of the Everglades with the mosquitoes, the humidity, and the heat in deplorable conditions? This is not the America that welcomed my family here. And that's an issue that I will speak out against, especially in a community like Miami, which is one of the most diverse and, let's be honest, one of the most Hispanic cities in the United States.
It's really difficult. I've said it plenty of times. It's difficult to think of Miami and Miami-Dade County without bringing the word diversity in it. And now diversity is a ugly word, a bad word that we cannot include it in inclusion or equity. Those three phrases or three words in that phrase, DEI, is just horrible. And Miami is like, when you see that 52% or anywhere between 52 to 54% are foreign born, right. Individuals are foreign born here. Diversity has to be part of it, and that's something that we want to erase. And it seems like our community is okay with it because we become, we're into country music now, and you're from Hialeah and you're into country music. What happened to your roots? What happened to your Dominican roots? What happened to your Cuban roots? What happened, and then so we're trying to erase and instead of merging everything.
Make no mistake, diversity is our biggest strength.
It is.
That is such a wonderful thing. And I'll give you a short analogy. I'm a tennis player. I love tennis. It's my sport. And you think back to before Serena Williams and Venus Williams, where you had very few black tennis players, for example, Arthur Ashe. But once you brought African Americans into the sport, once there was more diversity in the sport, what happened? The quality skyrocketed. Serena and is considered by many the greatest female tennis player of all time. But before, let's say in the 1950s and 40s,
it was all white.
It was all white with very few exceptions. There were exceptions, but the door was not open. And the door is still not 100% open. But whenever you open that door and you have more diversity, it's a good thing. We flourish. And that's one of our strengths here in Miami, our diversity. We should celebrate it. We should not be attacking it.
And that's what we're doing. We're attacking it not only from the federal level, but we're attacking it from the state level. And, it all filters down. Right. And who has to pay the brunt of it?
Right.
The local community. So it's really sad how we're in this mess unnecessarily.
And there's also the issue of cruelty, inhumanity. I think you and I ran into each other at the Save Gala in
Yes.
Miami Beach.
Yes.
And what an inspirational event that was, and such an important part of the community. And when you think about what the state of Florida did when they went around taking apart rainbow crosswalks, saying that, this is unsafe for traffic. Who are they trying to fool? Really?
It was actually the safest one on Miami Beach. Is the safest crosswalk.
I applaud the city officials in Miami Beach who were able to save those bricks and recreate it in a private area, make it a shrine to inclusivity and diversity.
And I'm going to go on a limb that I don't normally do, but I am going to invite every single one of you and yourself to come out June 3rd to the Stephen P. Clark Center, because we will be doing our last June Pride Month kickoff. And this year the board is highlighting that sidewalk and honoring Leonard Horowitz, who is the one who created the palette, Art Deco palette, which the bricks used to which the bricks were painted with that palette. And we're going to highlight the commissioners also, Commissioner Fernandez, Commissioner Bott, Commissioner Magazine, Commissioner Monica Salinas, because those are not only is Alex part of the community, right, but they're also allies. Commissioner Bott, Magazine, and Salinas and Dominguez are all allies. We got to highlight that. So I invite you to come out on June 3rd. I'll send you an invite. And you're right. We have to preserve that and highlight that, because that's part of our community. That's Absolutely. Part of our diversity that we were talking about. So it's so important. Right. And when we talk about those crosswalks, they're really, the majority of them are done in areas where there was a meaningful reason why they're there. The one in Orlando was because of polls.
Absolutely.
You know, the one in Miami Beach was because that's where the renaissance of Miami Beach came in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. So they're really iconic areas where these sidewalks are going in. They went in, and that's what.
Yeah, what we're seeing is the targeting of communities, the demonization of communities, the demonization of the LGBTQ community, the demonization of immigrants. This administration is blaming immigrants for everything from the cost of living, taking your jobs, committing crimes, eating your pets. It's horrific. We should not stand for this. And especially in a community like ours, we've been talking about the diversity being our biggest strength. We need to speak out. We cannot stay on the sidelines.
How do we change that narrative that we are labeled with here, that if you're not part of the right, you're an extremist communist or socialist, you know, because you look at it and the highest concentration support for the right is Miami-Dade County. So how do we change that narrative? Well, hopefully we're changing the narrative because I'm bringing you here. I'm bringing other candidates from the right here. From the left to change that narrative.
Well, I would remind you that for years and years and years, Miami-Dade County was a blue county, and voted blue in presidential elections when Obama won, Clinton won.
Thank God.
Yes. So we have a history of being a blue county, of voting blue. The mayor of Miami-Dade County is a Democrat. The mayor of the city of Miami is a Democrat. So I go back to the fact that if we have the right candidates, and we are smart as Democrats, are strategic as Democrats, we can certainly win in Miami-Dade County. We've won in the past, and we will win this election because this is the most important election of our lifetime. I know we always say that, but in this election, our democracy is at stake. Our Constitution is at stake. The right to due process is at stake. And America's reputation around the world is at stake. Our allies are turning their backs on us because of what's happening. We need to regain that position that this country has always had.
It's sad. It's sad to see the attack on the Constitution. There's more loyalty to the flag than to the Constitution, it seems like now. You know, the loyalty to the Constitution. Oh, everything could be reversed, and you know. Talk to us about that. I mean,
it's almost like it's a fascination with dictators. Like, oh, we don't need a constitution. We have our Poppy Trump who is going to tell us what to do. Well, no, that's not the way this country works. We are a country of laws, not of men. And I go back to immigration, where you're seeing that they're doing these what I could consider to be illegal things of, you know, dropping cases, you know, drawing people into a courtroom and suddenly dropping their case, but then grabbing them when they're outside. These are people who are trying to play by the rules, who are trying to do things the right way. It seems like there's no respect for the rule of law, no respect for our Constitution, and we have to get back to that because that is what sets us apart. You know, I'm Cuban American. You're Cuban American too?
No, Venezuelan.
Venezuela. Okay, well, both. We have something in common. We both come from a country that was taken over by far left socialists, right?
Right.
In the case of Cuba, a communist country with a centralized communist economy that, guess what, doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. It's a disaster. Cubans want to be capitalists. They want to be small business owners. They haven't been allowed to do that. Same thing with Venezuela. I've been to Venezuela many times. Venezuela should be one of the richest countries in the world because of the fact that they have oil, they have other natural resources. But what happened? You had a populist dictator like Hugo Chavez come in and win people over, making all kinds of promises, but basically changing the structure, the legal structure of that country to keep him and his party in power. And I'll just say that despite the fact that we got Maduro out of there, which I applauded, that country is still run by the Chavistas, and that is a shame.
I mean, listen, I applaud getting rid of Maduro and Celia Flores. I totally applaud that. But the fact that you still have the two Rodriguez's and Diosdado Cabello still in there, really nothing has changed. With Venezuela, How do you feel about Venezuela becoming the 51st state now that the president's pushing?
I don't know how to even address that issue. 51st, I thought Greenland was going to be 51 and Canada 52.
Or Puerto
maybe
Rico at least should be.
53. Well, Puerto
Or,
Rico would be the logical place if, of course, this would have to be
right, approved
decided by the Puerto Ricans and by the Congress, but that would be the logical 51st state. And now all of a sudden we're talking about Venezuela. I mean, what's going to be next? France is going to be our next state. You just can't keep up with the craziness. It's just pure, unadulterated craziness.
And I think the distraction that continues to always be going on, and it's one thing after another, just distracting.
Pure chaos.
And to see that there's still people locally accepting and validating those decisions. Many of them are turning now because it's impacting them through immigration reasons.
Absolutely.
I was brought here as a dreamer. I mean, I came here on a student visa. My student visa expired, and my parents kept me here for a longer time. I had to leave at a certain point to go back to Venezuela, wait until my sister was old enough to claim me. And thank God back then it wasn't the 14 years that we have to wait now or plus. And I was able to be given, the residency. Mm-hmm. When I was in Columbus, I remember I filled out all the forms on a typewriter, and I did it for myself and for my mom, and we became citizens, thank God. But there's a majority of people here who still are not legal. They're in a process of limbo, and they're very supportive of because back home they may have a socialist government, in Nicaragua and Venezuela, and they're still very supportive of what they're doing here, of wanting to send them back. I just don't understand that. I don't.
It's just cruelty. The three C's of this administration are chaos, corruption, and cruelty.
I like that.
And that's what they're doing, not just with Venezuelans, with Haitians, with Cubans, and I think the Cuban American community, the Venezuelan American community is seeing this administration for what it is, an administration of cruelty that is demonizing immigrants, and they don't care if you're from Cuba, Venezuela, Haiti, or wherever it is. If you're a little bit too dark-skinned for them, for their taste, they are going to demonize you. They're going to blame all that is wrong with this country on you, and that's un-American. We should not sit on the sidelines and stand for that.
It comes to a point that we have to reflect and see, how can we do better? And I think that's where you're at now. Right. How can we do better? And take us down that path that you're going to do something better.
How can we do better? Maria Elvira Salazar voted for the big, beautiful bill. What a horrible name that is, that stripped thousands of people from their health care subsidies. So suddenly you have all these people who lost their ability to get health care. This is a community that she claims to represent. There are a lot of people who just got into this country not too long ago, and that's how they're able to buy health insurance. Others that have been here longer. Why? Because the cost of housing is so expensive, it doesn't leave you much money for other costs like healthcare costs. So I will go to Congress to fight for those subsidies, to get those back for the people who lost it, so that they can have basic health care. And that is something that all Americans should have. We pay more for health care in this country than anywhere in the world, yet we have so many people with no access to it.
So why is universal health care such an ugly word?
I think that the insurance industry, the medical industry, perhaps has also been attacking it and made people think that it's some sort of socialism, some sort of communism, but we are the richest country in the world that does not provide universal health care for its citizens, and we definitely should. At least we should help people who cannot afford health insurance, help them get that health insurance, because in the long run, it's going to cost more. If they're able to go see a doctor early on before they have to go to an emergency room, and then they're legally allowed to get treatment, the taxpayers have to pay for it, it's much cheaper to pay for those early visits.
Of course,
than to pay
you're being
for when somebody's
proactive.
that sick. Exactly.
I mean, this war had what we've paid in this war. We could have already paid for universal health care for every single member that in the country. So that's the right there. That's just tremendously sad. But we're coming now to a close. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
What's your message to your constituents?
Sure. You want me to look at the camera?
Yeah.
Okay, I can do that. I'm a little familiar with it. I'm Elliot Rodriguez, and I want to be your congressman. It's about time that we as Democrats are smart and elect somebody in this primary that could win the general election. I believe I am that person, and I will represent you honorably in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service, both at the journalism side and now wanting to represent District 27. On that note, we appreciate you attending and joining us. Until next time, thank you.